So good afternoon, everybody. And it's a great joy this afternoon to greet our dear guest for this beautiful webinar about yoga therapy, Dr. Ganesh Mohan. And Dr. Ganesh Mohan is really one of the greatest experts in the world for yoga therapy. And when I say that, I don't exaggerate because I know his lineage and from whom he was learning about yoga therapy, from his father and the mother, who were the real exponents of yoga for yoga therapy, and they are still teaching in India. And they were one of the most important disciples of Sri Krishnamacharya, great yoga master in this generation. And I can say I had a privilege to meet them 15 years ago in Chennai and learning from them about yoga therapy. And I can say they are really keeping the teaching of Sri Krishnamacharya in its purity. And this is very rare, that you have ability to learn all the principles of that great master in a pure sense, transmitted through the family of Mohan. And so that's why Dr. Ganesh Mohan learned all that knowledge from his childhood, from that tradition through his parents, and also he was trained in the ancient studies, including the Sanskrit, Vedic chanting, and Ayurveda, and then went on to become a modern medical doctor. He is also the doctor of the modern medicine, but he is also a great expert in the Vedic chanting. I hear him a few times, and it's like a real Vedic Pandit sounding. And he integrates a full spectrum of holistic well-being methods in his work, in the movement, related to the movement, breathing, meditation, and mindfulness, lifestyle, diet, relationship, life guidance, and more. He has had extensive experience with thousands of students and patients across the world. He directs the Swastha Yoga and Ayurveda trainings, including the Swastha Yoga therapy program across the globe. So the system of yoga they gave name is Swastha, which means health. Swastha means to be established in the wholeness. And this is the real meaning of health. And he's a co-author of numerous books published internationally, such as Yoga Therapy, about the life of Sri Krishnamacharya and his teaching, and Yoga Reminder. And with his father, he is translator of important Sanskrit yoga texts, Yoga Yajnavalkya and Hatha Yoga Pradipika. And I can say that through their efforts, that Yoga Yajnavalkya became known to the world, because previously was more known Hatha Yoga Pradipika as a main text for Hatha Yoga, but it is not so old like Yoga Yajnavalkya, which has thousands years back. And it's a real source of the very traditional yoga approach. And I would like now our dear Ambassador, His Excellency, Ambassador of India in Croatia, Raj Kumar Srivastava, to address our dear speaker.
Good afternoon to you, Yogacharya Miklets, and other participants today in this special seminar to be addressed by the yoga expert and Acharya in his own right, Mr. Ganesh Mohan from India. And I think it's a privilege for us to listen to somebody who not only carries his own knowledge, but carries the knowledge of past generations. So you are going to hear something which is not just life of one human life, but multiple lives carried forward in the form of tradition. So that's the importance of today's session. And as the word suggests, yoga therapy. So today probably we are going to talk more about how yoga as a philosophy, yoga as the process can help treatment for people who are suffering with some ailments. Generally, we believe that yoga is a way of life in which you do not fall sick, but if you fall sick, then there is a method of therapy also that you can actually recuperate, rather than thinking that sometimes there is a feeling that when you are sick, you need to go to Western medicine. And when you are healthy, then you to remain healthy, you have to follow the traditional medicine. But yoga therapy, the name suggests that you can actually do the treatment in terms of problems that you have accumulated due to your own lifestyle. This is important because as the world has seen in the last 2 years, the pandemic, there have been some rethinking about how we should live our life in terms of day-to-day management of stress, management of our lifestyle. uh, you are aware that recently we have launched in India global life mission, which means the lifestyle for environment. And I think that's also part of the yoga philosophy, that you should not only be living in symbiosis with your own self and society, but also with environment. That also not only treat you as a human being, but also treat the climate change related stress on the environment. So lifestyle yoga not only treats you, the society, the peace, happiness, but also makes the environment ready for the future generation, and not only use it as a consumption for the current generation. So I think with those thoughts, I welcome Dr. Ganesh Mohan to give us the presentation and look forward to this nice discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was a wonderful introduction. I am so grateful that you're making this happen, you and Jatranko. It is a privilege to be here and offer this message to a wider audience. I have a slight cold, so if I'm clearing my throat every now and then, please pardon me. My father met his teacher, Sri Krishnamacharya, in 1971, more than 50 years ago. At that time, yoga was not popular. Not many people were really practicing it, even in India, even though the message, the teachings have been there for thousands of years. It is only more recently, maybe since the 1990s and then the 2000s, that we are gradually seeing increasing interest in yoga, and especially recently with the support of the Indian government and so much interest happening in taking the ancient wisdom that we have from the sages of the past all over the world, because that is so useful now. Now, just because something is old, ancient, doesn't mean that it is necessarily valuable, isn't it? When you look back at history, there have been things that our ancestors were also human beings. They have also done things that we look back and say, no, we don't want to repeat that. We don't think that is a good idea. But there has been a lot of wisdom that was there in the past that we have lost touch with because of how modern life has changed us. The Industrial Revolution, communication, has changed our life so much in the last 2 centuries that you know this very well. If you went back just 4 or 5 generations, your great-great-grandparents, they would hardly recognize the world as it is right now. The very fact that I am sitting here and speaking to you is quite extraordinary. Even in my own lifetime as a child, it was very difficult to talk to somebody who was far away. You had to make a special phone call, book it in advance, and all of that to just be able to talk to somebody over the phone for a few minutes. And yet here we are, sharing our experiences in real time. In this presentation, I would like to place before you some of the key principles of yoga as a therapy and emphasize its value. Why do we need it? Why does it make sense? What does it bring to us? And I wish to do that partly as a hybrid of also noting how holistic medicine, lifestyle medicine, looks at well-being nowadays and seeing how yoga fulfills many of those goals. So I have a presentation, a PowerPoint, which I will be happy to also share with you later. See, well-being is genuinely complicated. No one has all the answers. Even if you look back in time, it is not that yoga and Ayurveda had a cure for all diseases. If you look at Ayurvedic texts, for example, they say that some diseases are curable with difficulty and some diseases may not be curable. And that's the same situation now. We don't have a cure for all diseases. In fact, even this slight cold that I have now, it's a viral infection. We don't have any medication for this, just as we had no significant medication for the COVID pandemic. We can support people who are seriously unwell and maybe give some medication that makes a mild impact. Therefore, it's very important that when we are in the space of holistic well-being, especially combining ancient wisdom with modern science and in modern times, we must have some humility. And it's good to have some curiosity and a sense of appreciation, wonder too. Health is a matter of probability. There is a lot of variation from one person to the other. As my father's teacher, Krishnamacharya, used to emphasize, yoga should be personalized for the individual. No two people are entirely alike. We don't move in the same way. We don't have exactly the same diet. We certainly do not have the same relationships or the thoughts and emotions. Therefore, we need to personalize our approach. A complex problem like health and well-being requires a multimodal strategy. As we shall see, this is where yoga excels in dealing with chronic health problems with a multifactorial, multimodal approach. There is no lack of information nowadays. That's the wonderful outcome of this information revolution. We have the internet now. I think many of you may relate to this. If you go back, say, 30 years, the only way you could get information before the era of the internet was to go to a library. And you had to search and hopefully find what you were looking for. Now, this is so easy, right? We all have a little device like this in our hands. We type a few words and we have information immediately coming to us. But this is also the problem. You go to any bookstore or you look online, Amazon, and what do you find? There is a self-help section. That self-help section is growing and growing and growing. There are any number of strategies and suggestions about how you should exercise, right? What foods you should eat, so many different diet plans, what you should do for any variety of health problems, from anxiety or mental health issues to weight loss to stress management. Our problem nowadays is that we are in a deluge of information. There is information pouring on us. What are we supposed to do with that information? How do we manage this? One of the great strengths of traditional teachings is that it gives us a way of organizing that information experientially and practically. Rather than getting lost in all the details, the frameworks and presentations from yoga and its sister modalities, sister sciences like Ayurveda, give us a way to approach health and well-being that is more pragmatic and takes a bigger picture view, a holistic view. Now, that does not mean that we are abandoning the scientific view. This is important. Just because a presentation like yoga is ancient doesn't mean that it has lost sight of logic. This is a famous traditional saying in Sanskrit that says, don't accept based on blind faith. Try and verify for yourself and look for logic. And if there is good reason behind advice, suggestions, recommendations, take it, even if that comes from a child or it is just said to you by a parent. And don't take advice that doesn't make any sense, that is illogical, even if it is said by someone great. Of course, faith, trust has an important role to play, even in treatment. But our ancients were also capable of reasoning. Yoga is a logical system. See, there can be sources of knowledge, as yoga says. We can experience something directly called pratyaksha, or we can infer and reason, this is anumana, or we can take someone else's words for it and hopefully they are correct. And all of these can lead us to right knowledge or wrong knowledge. We must evaluate. Science is at the foundation of most of health and well-being in our modern approach. And most of these ideas about what makes an approach scientific, correlation and causation, falsifiability, the likelihood of a claim, can you replicate the results? Many of these points are entirely in concordance with the ancient systems and propositions of yoga. With that background, let's take a look at, given that yoga is a practical, sensible, a scientific way to look at ourselves, because that is what I just said now, that it is scientific and sensible, what does it really bring to us? So let's go back to the ancient systems that derived from India several thousand years ago, systems of thought. And yoga was one of the most important of those. There is yoga, there is Vedanta, there is also Buddhism. They're all related, they're all close to each other in their roots. What is the goal of yoga? In the most important text on yoga, the Yoga Sutra, in the second chapter, in the Sutra number 16, the sage Patanjali, the author, says, Heyam Dukkham Anagatam. Very simple. He defines the goal of yoga. The goal of yoga is to be free of suffering, dukkha. Now, that is a goal that all of us can get behind, isn't it? It is a universal goal for all living beings that I should not suffer. Now, how can we reach that goal? In fact, that is the goal of treating disease also, isn't it? To remove suffering. If the treatment produces more suffering than the disease, then we don't do that treatment. Now, thousands of years ago, sages experienced states of meditation. Now, there have been people who have been in deep states of meditation the world over. This is not only in India, but you find that their experiences have been systematized, codified, and passed on in the milieu, in the context that was existing in India, it facilitated that. So these practitioners in ancient India found the experience of freedom from suffering subjectively. They experienced a deep self-transformation. They had inner experiences that showed them that subjectively, I'm not my body, I'm not my senses. These negative emotions like desire, anger, and fear could be transcended. Now, those experiences are often what we call transcendental or spiritual experiences. And when sages like Buddha, Patanjali, and others had these experiences, they passed it on to others, teaching others how they could take that pathway. How could they also practice? How could other people also practice this pathway leading to this state of freedom from dukkha, suffering? Now, this is the root of yoga. Texts like the Yoga Sutra, and even before, the Vedic presentations like the Upanishads, they explain this pathway of deep meditation and transcending ourselves, and thereby freeing ourselves from dukkha, suffering. Now, you may ask, I don't want to do all that. You might say that. Quite reasonably, I do not wish to transcend my body. I do not wish to be in such deep states of meditation or something like that. I have a normal life to lead. Fair enough. Yoga is not a religion in that sense. It is not compelling us. It is not telling us that we should do this. It's not saying that if you don't do this, something is wrong with you. That's not how the presentation of yoga is. It is not philosophical, it is not religious, and it is not all or nothing. It doesn't say you either get to this extraordinary deep state of meditation or it is all useless. Not like that. Instead, the Yoga Sutra says rather simply that the practice of yoga fundamentally is to create more stillness of mind. This is a gradual progression. A little more stillness, a little quieter mind means that we are experiencing less dukkha, less suffering. We feel more at peace. We have less negative emotions. We experience more contentment and so on. But how can the mind be calm? How can we have these positive emotions like contentment? How can we have a feeling of peace inside us? Logically, scientifically, therefore, yoga goes on to say, we can't have a quiet mind if the rest of ourself is disturbed. If my body is shaky and restless, if my breath is disturbed and jerky, if my senses are wandering everywhere, my mind is not going to be quiet. And I'm not making this up. All of this is there in the traditional texts. If you really read the Yoga Sutra from 2000 years ago, he says this very simply. Dukkha daurmalasya angame jayatva shvasa prashvasaha vikshepa saha bhavaha. When the mind is disturbed, the body becomes shaky and the breath becomes jerky, and the reverse relationship also holds true. That's literally what the Yoga Sutra says. And herein lies the root of holistic well-being. There is so much interest in mind-body medicine nowadays. And that is not a new discovery. A lot of mind-body psychology, much of what we are exploring now, is there in the ancient presentations in yoga. So, yoga then logically goes on to give us a lot more tools and frameworks. If the mind has to be calm, then you need to find steadiness and quietness and positive emotions, etc. in all the other aspects of ourselves. So the Yoga Sutra gives us tools to manage our body, skills to manage our breath, ways to manage the senses, and it becomes a holistic self-management system. Therefore, yoga is an excellent system for self-care, for self-management, both for prevention and for therapy holistically. So look at the holistic map of yoga. Now, many of you may have heard of the 8 limbs of yoga. They're very famous. This is there in the Yoga Sutra given by Patanjali. And already you see in these 8 limbs, you have a very comprehensive framework addressing ethics, boundaries and behavior, our speech, emotions, thoughts, body feeling and movement, breathing, sensory management, and also meditation and mindfulness. That's pretty amazing already, isn't it? And on top of that, it's not just the 8 limbs. Yoga, even just the Yoga Sutra, gives us many more wonderfully interesting frameworks. How to develop conviction, how to develop absorption and periods of insight that lead us to transformation, that breakthroughs, aha moments, a deep view of the conscious and unconscious, how to develop what we call pro-social thoughts and feelings, love, joy, compassion, contentment, gratitude. The root level negative thoughts and feelings called the kleshas, desire, anger, fear, ego, and how to manage them. Many other obstructions in body, breath, problems and barriers, cognitive strategies called Pratipaksha Bhavana, and much more. I've laid some of these Sanskrit words out there to point out that so much of what we talk about in modern lifestyle medicine, in modern psychology, in holistic well-being is clearly and systematically, scientifically actually, adhering to good logic, laid out in the pathway of yoga. This is not mystic and it is not ancient in the sense that it is no longer applicable. In fact, it is entirely applicable right now. Now, the word swastha, which is the name that my parents chose to call this yoga that we are teaching, it's not about a style of yoga practice. If you asked my father's teacher, Krishnamacharya, he never had a name, label for his teachings. It was just yoga. It was the original yoga, as the ancients said, and made appropriate to each student. But if you have to give some name, the parents chose this word swastha because this is the goal of Ayurveda, health and well-being, which is balance. This is a famous quotation from the Sushruta Samhita, one of the most important texts on Ayurveda. Samadosha samagnischa samadhatu malakriya prasanna atma swastha ityavidhiyate. A person is supposed to be, swastha is supposed to be said to be well when they have balance in all of these. Now, yoga will help us get here, and it will also help us go further. See, all systems of well-being share some fundamental qualities. If you look at the foundation of modern medicine as well as ancient systems, they all go back to these roots of qualities and functions. Now, I don't wish to get too deep into this because this is a more detailed presentation and this is a short time that we have together, but I would like to quickly run you through some of these key points and you can reflect on it later. Now, if you look very deeply, all systems of well-being fundamentally deal with this. Qualities and functions. I will explain what that means. Now, for example, if you look at movement, you have these different qualities and functions under the domain, the capacity of movement that all of us have. If you wish to move well, you need to have these qualities and skills that are on the left side rather than the opposites. You need to be aware of your body, be relaxed, without tension. Movement should be easy, it should be efficient. You should be mobile, not holding yourself stiff. You should have stability, strength and endurance in your muscles. That is, you should have the capacity to generate force and the ability to generate that force again and again. A good functional range of movement, alignment that keeps you safe and supports your joints when you're loading. You should be able to walk with balance, with gait, respond to environmental stimuli quickly, be able to coordinate different complex movements, and have a good relationship with the body, positive thoughts and emotions. And if need be, you should be able to change your movement, be creative, don't be stuck in the same patterns. Now, these qualities are what we use in yoga when we work with asana. These are also the same qualities that we use in sports training and also in physical therapy and rehabilitation. Now, these qualities and functions are organized in many different ways by different systems of well-being. Here are three very common ways. Now, modern science typically organizes our qualities and functions like this, like a hierarchy. This is the most common way by which we understand the body and mind. We start from atoms, and then atoms become molecules, and then the nucleus, DNA, RNA, then the organelles inside the cells, tissues, organ systems. And then as the nervous system grows more complex, you have emotions and concepts and abstractions, and eventually you have self-awareness. This complex pathway is the reason why modern medicine has approaches, interventions that work at many, many different levels. You have medications that can work all the way down to the genes and within cells. And we have even practices all the way up to cognitive therapy that works on language, mindfulness practices. Now, the 8 limbs of yoga are not organized like this. They don't go from atoms to the mind. They are organized in one way. You can think of it like a landscape. We need to do all of them together. Under the yamas, we need to make behavioral changes, and then under asana, we work with the body, pratyahara, we work with the senses, and so on. We try and bring all of these together. Only when we bring all of these together, the skills under each one of them contribute to the outcome, the goal that we are looking for. Now, we can correlate that with a slightly modified version like this, a little more convenient, made for a more modern audience. Now, this is how we are tending to view well-being nowadays in lifestyle medicine also. We wish to work with all of these different areas. Under awareness, we work with mindfulness, meditation, different ways of absorption, contemplation. Under feeling, we work with the emotional states, how to cultivate positive emotional states, and how to work with negative emotional states. The challenges that we are experiencing in the modern approaches to well-being are partly a consequence of not having a sufficiently comprehensive outlook like this. If you look at each of these areas, for example, I looked at movement, you can also look at breathing. There is a detailed, substantially comprehensive set of skills that will help us reach well-being. Now consider this list, for example. There is nothing to disagree with in this list, isn't it? If you wish to breathe well, you need to work with all of these. We need to be able to feel our breath, breathe easily, breathe naturally, breathe deeply, breathe in different areas, and so on. All of these skills are relevant. Now, if you have imbalances, the ones in blue, that is a disorder. If you have someone with asthma, for example, bronchial asthma, such a common disorder, you might find that they are short of breath, they have difficulty with exhalation, breathing is unpleasant, it is effortful. If we teach them the skills to bring them back to balance, automatically we're helping them resolve that ill health, that disorder. This is what we do in yoga therapy. We analyze the imbalances that people have and help them come back to balance. It's very simple. And if we do that in all of these areas, which yoga does give us skills to do, we have a complete comprehensive system of holistic well-being and therapy. This is yoga therapy. Now, the beauty of yoga therapy is it gives us so many advantages, so much that is consistent with modern science and neurobiology, with lifestyle medicine now, that makes it really effective. See, nowadays, we talk about this biopsychosocial model. You pick up a textbook on physiotherapy, physical therapy, rehabilitation, working with the body, or you pick a textbook on psychotherapy, working with the mind, psychology. In both of them, you will find this presentation of a biopsychosocial model. That is, now we begin to understand that we cannot separate the mind from the body. That is not a new finding, but modern medicine has finally come around to acknowledging that very confidently, very clearly. Our biology, our body matters. Our psychology, our thinking matters. And sociology, the environment and the interactions that we have also matter. But this view is intrinsic to yoga. This is how yoga always was, isn't it? If you look at even the 8 limbs of yoga, it was always all of these things together. So, integrative transformation of ourselves, a holistic experience, has always been a thread running through yoga practice and all the theory of yoga. So we have practices in yoga that work from the body upwards, bottom up, and practices that come from top down, from the mind. If you take a problem like stress, anxiety, depression, a mental health issue, we cannot simply analyze the mind. We also have to change the body. We understand that very clearly now. We can do movement, breathing, changes in nutrition, in the senses, bottom up. And from top down, we can make other changes. This is another way to look at the frameworks of yoga, that we have this top down and bottom up approach already built into yoga therapy. Now, yoga therapy also has a very important emphasis on agency, that we must do something in order to create a transformation. See, this is one of the significant drawbacks that we face in modern medicine. Because treatment has become so complicated and it has become so separated from the effort of the individual, patients have become passive recipients. They just receive the treatment. They go to the doctor and then say, okay, what can you do for me? But many chronic health problems cannot be solved like that. If someone has back pain, for instance, they have to move. They have to do something with their back. They also have to change the way they feel about their back. If they have poor posture, little muscle strength, a lack of stability in their spine, there is no medication that is going to fix their back. They have to make the change in their posture and movement. If they continue to have negative thoughts about their back, thinking, oh no, my back is never going to be better, or I hate my back, it is so painful. If they keep thinking negative thoughts like this is going to worsen the chronic pain, because pain is in your nervous system and it responds to the dialogue. Agency, the participation of the individual in their therapy, in getting better, is vital for dealing with chronic disease. And that is central in yoga. It is always the person who does something for themselves, isn't it? We cannot do asana or pranayama or meditation for the student. The student has to practice. What we are skilled at is teaching, guiding, encouraging, and supporting the student to do that, which is exactly what is needed in chronic disease. And we can do that by gradually helping them create changes in their patterns. Those patterns are called samskara in the Yoga Sutra. Now, this is a very important map that is there in the Yoga Sutra itself, long time ago, which is profoundly practical. Look at this. This is our life cycle. We have thoughts and feelings in our mind. Based on that, we do some behaviors. And then we have feedback, we have life experiences. And why do we do all this? There are often triggers, things that we see or thoughts that come up in our mind. All of these leave behind latent impressions, subconscious, called the samskaras in us. This cycle keeps running day in and day out. There has been a lot that has been said in modern psychology, especially in the last century, about the role of the subconscious and the unconscious. We go to the theories of Sigmund Freud and all. And quite a bit of that is not really evidence-based. Quite a lot of Sigmund Freud's theories about the unconscious and subconscious. If you read a current textbook of psychology, they will tell you that it is not really evidence-based. We have discarded a lot of those ideas. The hypothesis cannot even be validated. But this presentation you find in the Yoga Sutra a long time ago is actually consistent with modern neurobiology and with life experience. There is nothing illogical about this. It is literally describing how you and I experience the cycle of our life every day. And based on that, it suggests that if we change the thoughts, feelings, the behavior, life experience, and some triggers, we can change the subconscious. That's all. This is an extraordinarily hopeful message and nothing too complicated. And importantly, that subconscious is not just in the mind. If we have depression, for instance, those negative thoughts, those feelings of hopelessness, low mood, low energy, yoga does not think of them as just being in the mind. So it doesn't say you cannot snap out of depression. The yoga perspective is that those are patterns that are in every layer of ourself, mind, body, senses. And it is all integrated. The way to change ourselves, therefore, is through creating different patterns little by little in all these layers. Now, all of this is extremely consistent with modern science, with neurobiology, with all the advances as we understand it now. The role of practice and effort, creating neuroplasticity, rewiring the brain, how action and experiences are the way to create that rewiring. We have this subconscious processing that's happening in the background all the time. We don't know it, but it's influencing us. And there is a lot of variability. There is also randomness. Yoga does not say we can predict everything that happens or our behavior. And how mind and body, biology and mind are united. All of this is deeply consistent and entirely accepted from the yoga therapy perspective. And this is what we are understanding now in modern medicine. So you see, this brings me to the conclusion of this set of slides. In this presentation, please. The models, frameworks, practices, insights in classical yoga is exceptional. It provides us one of the best, if not the only actually, comprehensive system of holistic well-being that is time-tested, practical, and rational. It makes sense. Now, this is why it is truly easy to deliver good results with a sound yoga therapy approach for a wide spectrum of chronic health conditions. And it's also possible to integrate it very well with modern medicine because there is no real conflict between all these frameworks and presentations of well-being in yoga and what we understand in science. Now, there are several other slides in this presentation which I have skipped over because this is such an interesting, vast topic. But my goal here has been to touch upon some of the highlights of the roots of yoga therapy, why it is valuable, how it takes a holistic approach, and the concordance and practical relevance between modern science and well-being and yoga. Going beyond that presentation that you saw now, practically, if you look at the challenges in health and well-being that we are facing now in modern life, we have made a lot of advancement in the last century or two in treating many diseases. Those advancements have been especially good in treating in certain types of infectious diseases and in surgery, especially amazing, right? And in acute care. If you have a heart attack now, you can be rushed to the hospital very quickly and you can be treated in a way that gives you a much greater probability of survival than, say, 30, 40 years ago. But that is not true in the case of chronic disease. There are many categories of chronic disease where our treatments, our approaches are not really doing well, or they are in fact doing no better than what we had decades ago. And the rates of some of these diseases are increasing. You see that obesity, diabetes, metabolic disease is increasing. All the mental health problems, almost all of them actually, are increasing. And this is true. You read the textbook, medical textbook says this, that if you look at surveys and you look at the population level statistics, that means there is something missing. The rates of depression, the rates of, say, attention deficit disorder, these diagnoses that are increasingly common now, is so high nowadays. Something like some 1 in 10 children in the United States are now diagnosed with ADHD. That's an absurdly high number, isn't it? And the rate of depression, anxiety, even as diagnosable disorders, is ballooning. This means that there is a lack. We are missing something here in the modern medical way of doing this. Treatment. And what we are missing is many of the things that I took you through in this presentation. A holistic approach, this combining the body and mind, agency, the participation of the individual in their care. These are all vital. If we skip these and try and deal with problems like depression or eating disorders or obesity, it won't work because these are substantially rooted in the combination of body and mind and behavior of the individual. this is where yoga therapy shines. Because of its roots and its approach, it offers a wide spectrum of very practical tools that can be brought to bear upon this whole list of chronic health problems. So I hope I have given you an overview and made an interesting and strong case for looking deeper into yoga therapy and its value as a system and maybe even as a profession in the modern era. If there are any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'd be happy to take them up.
Thank you very much, dear Dr. Ganesh Mohan. You gave such a beautiful scientific explanation about the main principles of yoga therapy. And it is really very rare to see such very clear and, as you said at the beginning, very logical, which is very much important approach to the life, and which is very realistic and the most helpful in that sense for the people. And now, if there are any questions, please, you can ask even directly, or yes, if there is any question, please, you can ask. Yes, there is one question from Pejale. What is the issue with the bandhas? Whether they are, in which way they are useful for the health, the bandhas, practice of the bandhas in the therapy.
I think it is referring to the bandhas in this chart. As you can see in this chart, the bandhas are way down the list after all these different skills of breathing. It is a very complicated topic. The basic idea of the bandhas is that we control the breath and our awareness and bring that to an inner experience, an inner place of focus inside the body. And in this process, you also have some health benefits because of the muscular actions, the changes in the circulation, the changes in the breathing. And you also have psychological benefits because of the way in which you focus on that inner experience, the interoception, the inner sensations in the body. But it needs to be done with some skill and guidance, because it usually involves muscular contraction as well as breath holding. For example, to do Uddiyana Bandha, you need to pause your breath, hold your breath for a while. And so it should be done with guidance from a teacher and with some understanding of what we are trying to get out of it, because you can do bandhas for different purposes. So it's a large topic, but this is the basic idea. You do it with pausing the breath and controlling the breath with inner attention and with some degree of muscular contraction. There are many purposes for which you can do the bandhas. It's not that it should be done by everybody casually every time they do asana practice. It's not necessary to practice the bandhas like that. Prepare yourself with good movement and good breathing skills first, and then gradually go on to practicing the bandhas with some understanding of what you're expecting to get out of doing it. If you're doing a Mula Bandha, for example, are you trying to do it as a meditation, or are you trying to do it with the idea that you're working on the pelvic floor? Are you doing it for a therapeutic purpose? Or are you doing it simply as a part of long exhalation practice? You do it a little differently. Based on these goals, the way you would instruct it and practice it would be a little different. So approach it gradually with a good teacher.
Thank you very much. And some more questions. What is your position on prana?
These are extremely complicated questions. They require attending some serious study. The word prana appears right from the Vedas and the Upanishads, maybe 3,000 years ago. Whether it is used in different contexts. It is used, for example, in the Prashnopanishad, one of the most important Upanishads that speaks about prana in detail. It is used to talk about life force and the different aspects of function of the life force. And that is obviously, it is real, it is intangible. You don't experience it like you experience something on your skin like that. But obviously it is there, because you are alive, you have life force. It is the same word prana is used in Ayurveda. It is used to refer to a subset of vata, the dosha vata. The word prana is used in the Hatha Yoga text to refer to simple breathing. And sometimes it is used just to refer to the inhalation component of breathing, and apana refers to the exhalation component of breathing. So the context in which we use that word itself changes its meaning, but generally it has to do with life force and with the act of breathing or with the inner experience, the subtle experiences that we have when we breathe and we sense that interoception, the inner body sensations. So it's an intricate topic. It's not a matter of actually asking whether it is real or unreal. In any of these meanings, it is real, in that it is either referring to life force or to your breath or an inner body experience. And all of these things are real, without a doubt. But we must know what we are referring to. In order to understand what we mean by that word and how we use it, it's important to also understand a little more about the context so we can use it appropriately, use practices and understand it appropriately.
Thank you. Just maybe one more question, then I would like His Excellency Rajkumar Srivastava to conclude this webinar. And one more question maybe about yoga therapy. One important thing what you mentioned is that with the yoga therapy approach, we are healing the person. We are approaching the person, not the symptom, not the illness. And it's treating the person, making the person healthy with all his levels of his existence in a holistic way. And then the symptom is a byproduct which will go away on its own when the person is healed.
That is such an important point that I will just take 1 minute to just show you this slide, which Chatranka also would have seen and been familiar with. So you see this is a very important teaching that was fundamental to Krishnamacharya's method, and that my parents would keep on saying, that the yoga practice is dependent on the purpose and the person. Who is the person and what is their purpose? Because without that, what we teach might not really get the person to the goal that they need. So thank you, Chatranka, for bringing it back to that such an important fundamental point. Every person has a story. It's very important not to miss that story when we deal with the therapy, which is often what happens sometimes in a modern consultation, right? We quickly give the person some medication and we move them on. But many chronic diseases don't arise in one day. There's a trajectory. There is something that went on over many years that led to the high blood pressure, the eating disorders, the obesity, the diabetes, and so on. And we cannot fix that without listening to that story and helping the person make that change over some time. And that is such an important role that we bring through yoga. It's a essential role, actually, that we seem to be missing in modern medicine, and that we are realizing increasingly now. In modern medicine, there is so much interest. I'm in a large group with so many lifestyle medicine doctors, and there is a lot of people interested in bringing this into the modern field. So yes, absolutely. We have to look at the person. Thank you.
Thank you. And please, Your Excellency, if you would like to give your concluding remarks for this beautiful webinar.
Thank you. It was a wonderful presentation by Dr. Mohan, and I thank you personally for that. You talked about prana. So I just wanted to share a recent idea that came across in a seminar that we organized on 25th of October in Zagreb about the influence of Vedic knowledge in the mind of Nikola Tesla, the famous physicist, the scientist who was born in Croatia, and more or less at the same time when Swami Vivekananda was active, and he met him in Chicago in 1893. So Swami Vivekananda, as you know, very well talked about and wrote about the three important things in human existence: Akasha, Kalpa, and the Prana. The Akash, Kalpa, and Pran. So space, time, and energy. And this was the three things that actually influenced Nikola Tesla to say that he is talking from spiritual angle, the same thing that I'm trying to discover or define in the field of physics. So very beautifully, Swami Vivekananda had summarized that in our Vedanta, it is very clear that there are 5 senses that are given to human beings. And these 5 senses allow us to perceive the time and space, Akash and Kalpa. If these 5 senses can be controlled through yogic exercises, you can then experience the only truth, and that is prana, which is energy. And that is the truth of this universal existence, that we get bogged down in time and space, forgetting the real dimension is energy and prana. And that's why pranayama. The pranayama is not a breathing exercise, is our ability to control the prana energy, and not only within our body, but outside our body. And that's why people achieve a lot of success when they understand this consciously or subconsciously to harness the energy within us and outside us. So I think that's a very beautifully explained Karma Yoga principle from Swami Vivekananda, which even affected one of the most contributing scientists of this world, Nikola Tesla. The reason why we are able to talk today with such a big distance between us is electricity. And that was thanks to Nikola Tesla. So that was my thoughts on prana. And about this yoga therapy that you explained about the person's importance, the person at the center of the focus. That's essentially today's governance model also. What we are trying to achieve in India is that everything that we do, whether it is governance or growth or globalization, the person should be at the center, not the profit. So the one P should be the focus and not the other P. I would like to use this platform today provided by Yogacharya Miklets to also inform our audience today that we are going to participate in this conference that is taking place on 1st to 4th December in Zagreb fair ground on the energy, like food and healthy lifestyle. And India will be one of the partner countries, and some of our stakeholders will present the ideas from India for 4 days, including yoga sessions by Yogacharya Miklets. So look forward to seeing some of you there. Thank you once again, Dr. Mohan, for your presence and wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And also, I would like to invite everybody next week, the same time, on Tuesday, we have another webinar with Dr. Irena Shvenda about Ayurvedic preparations and food supplements for strengthening the health of the person. So this will be in Croatian language. So please join next Tuesday on 4 o'clock. Thank you, Dr. Ganeshji, and many, many greetings to your parents and we wish you great success, and that more and more people in the world can have benefit from you, because you are unique in that, because you are a medical doctor and related to that ancient tradition in an original way. And this is very important, that this modern time we have this blending, but keeping purity of the traditional, because sometimes blending can distort what is the original. But your expertise is to keep the original intact with the modern expressions, and thank you very much for that. And all the participants, thank you very much for participating. Thank you. Bye.